Have you ever wondered how much trash an average family might produce in a year? Maybe not, but I have, which is why in our house we saved all of our non-organic trash from Earth Day 2019 until Earth Day 2020. That's what's inside all of these boxes, which I've been keeping around until I could figure out a good way to show it to you. And now, thanks to the wonder of Immersive 360 video, I can. But first, let's take it outside where there's a little more room to dump it out. Here it is, an entire year's worth of trash. Just imagine a pile like this in front of your home at the end of every year, or in front of every home in your neighborhood at the end of every year. It's mostly composed of plastic. There are enough plastic containers in this pile to hold the fuel necessary for a Prius to travel coast to coast across the U.S. from one end to the other and then back again. The plastic bags and sleeves, when stacked end to end, would be taller than the Seattle Space Needle. The glass in this pile is equivalent in weight to an adult panda bear, about 300 pounds. If we stack the cans on top of each other, they'd equal the height of 8 giraffes. And there's enough paper and cardboard here to make an entire 45-foot tall tree. There is a lot of garbage here. I do want to call your attention to this pile in the middle. There's about 4 or 5 stacks, bound stacks of junk mail. This is a year's worth of junk mail, which holds special interest to me because when I first got the idea of saving all of my garbage for a year back in 2006, I couldn't imagine how I could possibly really save all of my garbage for an entire year. So I decided to save my junk mail as a smaller symbol of waste. At the end of the year, I ended up with 50.5 pounds of junk mail, 47 pounds of which were unsolicited business advertisements and credit applications. Of course, that was back in 2007. I figured things might be a bit better by now since so much of our communications have become electronic. But in 2020, I ended up with 75 pounds of junk mail. That's a 50% increase in 13 years. Of course, the question now is, what happens next? What happens to all of my garbage once I finally decide to throw it away? Let's go to our local waste-to-energy facility to find out. Okay, here we are at the waste-to-energy facility in Spokane, Washington. And I'm surrounded not only by trash, but lots of really good friends. This is Emily over here with the AmeriCorps, who has volunteered with the others to help us separate these into recycling bins when the time comes. But we're going to learn a little bit more about what happens to this trash first. Shelly is in front of me here. There's Josh. Say hello, Josh. Hello. And this is Peggy, who is the woman who has been putting up with this trash for 2.5 years and my garbage for a lot longer. So anyway, it's great to have all of you here. Thanks so much. And to my left here is Chris Major, who happens to be a waste reduction educator for the city of Spokane. And I'm so glad to have you here with us, and thank you so much for all of your help making this happen. First of all, have you ever seen a year's worth of trash all at once, and what do you think of it?
No, I haven't, and it's quite impressive. So, and it's great to visualize it because you always think about, oh, how much would I generate in a year? But, you know, the trucks take it away every week and you just never get to see it. So this is pretty awe-inspiring.
Yeah, so even with all the garbage you see every day and day in and day out, it's pretty impressive to see it all at once. Exactly,
and to know that 2 people created it.
Yeah, yeah. I know, I imagine it sitting on the front lawn of every yard in the neighborhood from time to time, and just, you know. But anyway, a waste reduction educator. That's a really interesting title. Tell us a little bit about what you do and why the city of Spokane cares enough about waste reduction to actually have an employee to help educate people about it.
Well, I like to think of a term I heard not too long ago was, waste is a terrible thing to mind. And so it costs ratepayers, it costs the city to deal with garbage. And so if we can teach people how to make less of it, hopefully we save people money, and then ultimately what I think we all have the goal is trying to save the planet. You know, protect the resources that we have, protect the natural resources from the litter and other things generated by the garbage, and just be better citizens because of that.
For sure, and I really appreciate you talking about the environment, because one of the things I've learned since taking on this project is we have a pretty good system in Spokane for dealing with garbage. And I've always heard we incinerate it, which I thought, oh my gosh, all that pollution goes into the air. That's got to be one of the worst things we can do. But that's not the case. So tell us a little bit about the history of garbage. Once you get a mound of garbage like this at the facility and transform it into energy, what happens to it?
All right, well, anybody that's throwing garbage away in the county, for the most part, it will eventually end up here at the waste energy plant. And so we'll take it up over a scale house to weigh it, put it out on a floor, and then we have this big claw that picks it up and feeds it into 2 boilers. And so the boilers, yes, we are burning the garbage, but we're reducing that trash into ash. And the ash is 90% less by volume. So ash still has to go to a landfill, but it's going to take up a lot less room in the landfill. It's not going to leach any nasty stuff out of it when it goes there. It's not going to generate any greenhouse gas emissions like methane that raw garbage going to a landfill will create. And we happen to use the heat from burning that garbage to make electricity. So we can make enough electricity for 13,000 homes. So about 22 megawatts. So at least we're getting something positive from all this negative trash that people are throwing away. But there really is no good way of dealing with garbage except not to make it. So my job as an educator is to try to help people learn that reduce and reuse and recycle are so important so that there's less to throw away.
Okay, which brings us to where we're at right now. This is actually the recycling center at the facility. And we are going to take this and try to recycle as much of it as possible and then come back and see what's left. So we're going to take a little break while you listen to a word from our sponsor. And then, I'm kidding, we have no sponsor. But through the magic of editing, we're going to see you in just a couple of seconds while we take a little bit of time here, real time here, to sort this out. So we'll see you in just about 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. Okay, we're back just like that, but a lot has changed since we last saw you. We've changed locations, our volunteers have gone home, and most importantly, we've gotten rid of a lot of trash by recycling it, and this is what's left. So, Chris, tell us a little bit about how we did.
We did awesome. I don't know, I'd have to go back and look at the footage, but the pile was much bigger. I think we probably were able to recycle over half of it. And the things that we learned when the volunteers were sorting is that there were definitely things that were recyclable, I think that surprised them, but definitely things that weren't. And so you'll see what we have left are like styrofoam, mailing envelopes, plastic coated envelopes, and laminated paper, so and cartons, and single-use plastics too.
And single-use plastics too. Okay, so but a lot of it did get recycled, and we went down from about 30 boxes to I think we had 7 boxes. Of course, the boxes were all different sizes, so 50% recycled. That's a lot, right? And so now what happens to this trash that cannot be recycled? What magic is going to happen here at the waste energy facility? All
right. Well, we're right now on our tipping floor. So this is where people bring in the garbage. On the other side of the building is where trucks are bringing it from 2 other transfer stations in the county, as well as what they pick up at curbside. And then this side of the building is what residents can self-haul and bring in. But everything gets thrown on the floor just like your pile of garbage. And eventually we will have a big front end loader push this trash behind us against this wall, where a claw is working behind us too, is mixing up that garbage. We'll pick it up and we'll feed it into our 2 boilers. So this is a waste energy plant. In our boilers, we burn the garbage and we use that heat for burning the garbage to make steam and make electricity from that.
Wow. And so in your estimation, how much of this will be left that cannot be turned into energy and will end up in a landfill?
So there's a 90% reduction from waste to the ash that will be left. So yeah, there's only going to be 10% of this that'll be an ash that will go to landfill. And if there's any metal at all that we didn't pull out for recycling, we'll be able to recover that and be recycled from the ash.
Wow. So this is really great news, right? I'm sure we all started off rather alarmed. We had a year's worth of trash, but we've been able to recycle about half of it, and about 90% of what's left is going to be turned into green energy. Is it fair to call it green energy?
Well, it depends on the person you talk to.
Different opinions. Different opinions.
Very controversial, but yes, electricity that people can use from garbage.
Mm-hmm. And then about 10% of that. So we're really looking at about 5% of my overall garbage is going to go to a landfill.
Yeah.
Well, I'm impressed and I'm grateful. Thank you so much for helping to educate us about the importance of waste reduction, but also about the possibility of waste reduction. The very real possibility.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks. Okay, Chris, here we are. One last location before I let you go. We wanted to stop off here in the boiler room to talk a little bit about your mitigation efforts to prevent as much bad pollution and carbon emissions from going into the air. As you've already said, the best way to deal with garbage is not to make it. But that leaves us with some choices to do the best we can. And we think that burning it here is one of the best things we can do because why?
Right, because anytime you burn something, there's always that fear of what's going up in the smoke. And so we do process 800 tons of garbage here in these two boilers on either side of us. So we do get very hot temperatures. We're reducing all that garbage that was dropped off into an ash that won't take up as much room in a landfill. But yeah, how do we clean that air? So it does start in the boilers. We have chemicals like an anhydrous ammonia that we spray into the boilers to neutralize nitrogen oxide gases. We're also using carbon to pull out mercury. And then on the other side of the wall in front of us is where the heavy pollution is managed. We have acid scrubbers that use a lime slurry to neutralize acidic gases. And then there's a bag house. So fabric lined cylinders are filtering out the particulates from that air or smoke that's coming out of the boilers. So really what goes out our stack outside is really as clean as we can get it. And we're very highly regulated. You know, we have permits of what we can emit. And we really pride ourselves on being operating well below those permit levels. So when you compare this to landfill and the methane gas that those produce, we don't have methane in our process here, and we're cleaning the air pretty darn well.
Yeah, so methane is a real issue here in Washington. I understand it's one of the largest producers is waste management. So the fact that you're able to eliminate the methane gas also helps make it not green but greener.
Right. I mean, landfills tend to produce methane, and I think the third largest emitter of methane in our state, very potent greenhouse gas. But for every ton of garbage that is processed in a waste energy plant, we're keeping 1 metric ton equivalent of CO2 out of the atmosphere. So when you look at the lifespan of a ton of garbage, it does make environmental sense to use this type of technology to manage it.
All right, well, once again, thank you so much for doing such a great job helping to educate us about some of our options when it comes to waste management. The best option, of course, is to make as little trash as we can.
Exactly.
Okay, thanks again, Chris. So that's the story of my year's worth of trash from beginning to end. Such a story might end a little differently in your community, but no matter how we dispose of our trash, human societies have always created waste and left behind burial mounds to prove it. Today's burial mounds are called dumps and landfills, and they too contain an archaeological record about us, about what's important to us and what isn't. What we waste can say a lot about us, and so can what we save.